Tonight, a night of unprecedented violence as police and fire crews were attacked with fireworks and petrol bombs.
Oh, it was terrifying. I was in the house and at one point there was a firework actually hit my window.
8 police officers were injured, also making the headlines. The sheriff who found himself in the dock at court, guilty of making sexually explicit and racist comments during a Zoom training call.
Rangers players hail their captain as a man mountain after James Tavernier's goals helped the Ibrox club reach the League Cup final.
And a woolly tale about a dramatic cliff rescue which ended years of solitude for Scotland's loneliest sheep. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. It's been called a night of unprecedented violence against Scotland's emergency services. In Edinburgh, police officers were attacked with fireworks and petrol bombs. Fire crews from Bathgate were chased from the scene of a 999 call before rocks were thrown at their engine. And in Glasgow, a group of 20 youths fought and threw fireworks at each other.
Across the country, 8 police officers were injured. So far, 2 arrests have been made. Efforts continue to identify everyone responsible. And once again, it's reignited the debate over whether fireworks should be sold to the public. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
From in this house in Edinburgh's Niddrie area last night, the tension and fear is audible as chaos reigns outside.
It was terrifying. I was in the house and at one point there was a firework actually hit my window. So at that point I called the police and the police said that there were already police there, and just after that I looked out the window and there was a cordon of policemen right outside my house. Last year was bad, but this year was 100 times worse.
For more than 4 hours, from 20 to 5 to almost 9 o'clock, fireworks, masonry, bottles and petrol bombs rained down on police in Hay Avenue. Up to 50 people were involved, and there are significant concerns about the level of coordination behind the attack.
From the evidence that we've gathered, from the observations that we've made on the ground, it was clear that whilst it was in the main young people who were attacking police, there have been adults in the area in vehicles who've been moving about and supplying fireworks to those young people, essentially exploiting them and encouraging them to attack the police. And I think that's what makes this much more sinister as an act.
The leader of Edinburgh Council has condemned those responsible and suggested new legislation could be used next year to effectively ban the sale of fireworks across the city.
It's totally unacceptable, so for me, I want to stop that happening. I do not want to have, as happened last night, this area of Edinburgh was closed down to the public, buses were diverted, people couldn't come out of their houses, and a dispersal zone was put in place. It's unacceptable in this day and age. So for me, the banning of fireworks, whether that's as a temporary thing for next year or permanently, needs to be seriously looked at going forward.
4 police officers were hurt in Niddrie, another 4 injured at an incident in Glasgow. It happened in Quarrywood Avenue in Barmulloch, where youths were fighting and throwing fireworks.
The first thing you do is worry about your own safety and your staff's, especially with our staff. You could tell they were worried. Like, I'm from this area, I sort of know what to expect, but for a lot of them it was their first bonfire up this sort of way, so they're not used to seeing that sort of, gang culture, it seems like.
This fire engine from the Bathgate station had to be taken out of service after the windscreen was smashed. The crew had been attending a fire in Blackburn when they were attacked with fireworks. After withdrawing to what they thought was a safe distance, they were followed on a moped and rocks were thrown towards the driver.
That's an 18-ton fire appliance, and when that fire appliance is moving, if they're directing missiles, rocks and such like at the driver, it can easily put him off, and catastrophe could have occurred in those circumstances. Clearly, the crew coming under attack wouldn't have really anticipated that.
This was one of 15 attacks on firefighters across Scotland in the last week, 9 of them last night. The fire service is now working with the police to identify those responsible and bring them to justice.
My thoughts go out to all the emergency workers who were attacked last night. The scenes that we've all seen were absolutely appalling, and this behaviour is totally unacceptable.
Overall, the number of firework incidents across Scotland was down this year, but the seriousness of the worst ones could have long-lasting consequences. Gordon Cree, STV News.
Traumatised after almost a month trapped in Gaza with the anguish of airstrikes and little food and water. The First Minister's mother and father-in-law arrived back in Scotland at the weekend in what he described as an emotional reunion.
But with many of their loved ones still living in the war zone, Hamza Yousaf reiterated calls for a ceasefire and says he's determined Scotland will be on the right side of history. Lynn Rankin reports.
Relieved and happy to be home. Majid and Elizabeth El Nakla were reunited with their family in Dundee at the weekend after almost a month trapped in Gaza.
I mean, of course relieved, elated in fact, to have them back, but also we heard from my father-in-law in particular just how difficult it was for him to leave his mum behind, to leave his son behind, to leave his grandchildren, 4 grandchildren behind, one of which is only 3 months old. It's the first time I've ever seen my father-in-law break down in tears, so it was really emotional to hear that. And of course we're still in absolute distress at the man-made humanitarian catastrophe that's happening in Gaza.
For those unable to leave the war zone, another night of intense airstrikes. After 4 weeks of heavy bombardment, the death toll in Gaza now stands at more than 10,000. Food, water and medical supplies are rapidly running out.
1 million people, no food, no water.
Days into the conflict, the First Minister's mother-in-law sent this emotional video. Retired nurse Elizabeth El Nakla feared for her life and those who couldn't flee.
Where's humanity? Where's people's hearts in the world?
Mother would tell me as soon as it became nightfall, as soon as sunset happened and it was dark, she would just begin to sweat, body would sometimes convulse because that was when they would hear the drones, the bombs, the airstrikes, and they would just not know whether they would survive the night. They are absolutely traumatised. 4 weeks in a war zone. In fact, at one point my father-in-law was talking to a neighbour who'd kindly come to the door, and a firework went off and he saw his body jump and he got the fright of his life.
The First Minister's brother-in-law, who is a doctor in Gaza, continues to care for people caught up in the conflict.
My brother-in-law is a hero. He's been at the hospital, Al Nasser Hospital in the south of Gaza, just treating men, women and children, but he tells me it is insufferable. I think it's time the international community stood up and was on the right side of history. I'm determined that Scotland will be on the right side of history here.
While the El Naklas now begin to process their pain from a place of safety, for tens of thousands of others trapped in Gaza, the war and the worry continues. Lynn Rankin, STV News.
Other stories now, and the Scottish Government says it has submitted all the material it holds to the UK COVID inquiry. The Deputy First Minister, Fiona told MSPs that 14,000 WhatsApp messages and 19,000 documents would be handed over by the end of today. Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack has yet to submit his evidence, which was due in September.
The former STV reporter Sheila Duffy has died at the age of 77. As the first female journalist at the station, she became a well-known face to audiences before being part of the team that launched Radio Clyde. She is survived by her husband, Paul Young, known for playing Shug in Still Game. A former sheriff has admitted making sexual and racist remarks about a pornographic film while he was leading an online training day for fellow judges. Alistair Duff, who once represented the Lockerbie bomber, was heard making the comments after he left his microphone on during a lunch break.
One who overheard the 69-year-old has exclusively told STV News they were left shocked and disgusted by his actions. The former sheriff, who retired weeks after the incident, has been fined £1,275 after admitting his guilt at Edinburgh Sheriff Court. Vanessa Kennedy reports.
A walk into court he's done countless times, but today Alistair Duff chose to cover up as he faced the consequences of a crime. It was back in October 2021 that he was heard making sexually explicit and racist comments while on a lunch break during an online training session. He'd left his microphone on and was heard describing pornography involving a man and a woman dressed in school uniforms during a call with another man. Other comments made were so explicit we cannot broadcast them, but those on the conference call say they were shocked at what they heard.
It was one of these situations you kind of took a double take because you thought, am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? And then you were looking and listening and realised that yes, you were hearing what you were hearing. It was quite vile dialogue coming from him. I was totally shocked and horrified when I heard it.
Alistair Duff had a prominent career as a lawyer and at the time was in charge of training Scotland's judges. He also represented Abdel Basset al-Megrahi as part of the high-profile Lockerbie bombing trial. The lawyer representing Duff said his client admitted making crass and offensive remarks, but there was no significant sexual element to the offence, something the court accepted. He added that the 69-year-old was embarrassed and ashamed by his actions. Today, Alistair Duff was fined £1,275 after pleading guilty to conducting himself in a disorderly manner and committing a breach of the peace. The Sheriff Douglas Keir told Duff he'd taken into account his long and distinguished career in what was a troubling and anxious case. As his own lawyer said, it was a reputation built over decades, destroyed in seconds. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News at Edinburgh Sheriff Court.
Other stories in the West. In Glasgow's old College of Building and Printing, wrapped in People Make Glasgow advertising since 2014, is set for redevelopment. A property firm wants to turn the B-listed tower block into offices for science and technology businesses. It says it'll be ready by winter 2025. Staff at a number of Asda stores have held protests as part of the largest ever private sector equal pay claim. The GMB union says workers in some roles will effectively work for free from now on when compared to colleagues in depots. Approximately 50,000 current and former workers are suing the company as part of the dispute.
It's a basic thing to be asking for. I mean, we're doing the exact same job as the warehouses. It's been proven that we are doing the exact same job as what the warehouses are doing, only they're doing it in reverse. We're doing it, we're facing the customer day after day, but they're not doing that. We're doing what we're being asked to do, and they're getting £3 maximum an hour more.
A major road in Glasgow is closed for the next 5 days for emergency repairs after it subsided. North Street is shut at its junction with Argyle Street. A diversion is in place for anyone wanting to join the M8 eastbound carriageway. Businesses have welcomed an announcement that Glasgow city centre bars will be able to stay open for an extra hour, but say it's not enough to boost the late-night economy. Pubs currently have to close at midnight, but will be able to apply to stay open until 1 a.m. under a one-year pilot scheme. Caroline Lewis reports.
This time next year, the bell for last orders in Glasgow will ring an hour later to give a boost to the nighttime economy. But those working in the industry say, while it's welcomed,
relaxation of any of our kind of operating hours is always going to be beneficial. It's always going to be helpful to us somewhere along the way. Obviously, it just seems like a kind of, we're going to run before we can walk. You know, the lack of nighttime trains, the lack of nighttime buses. We're not seeing people sticking around till 12 o'clock at the moment, let alone, 1 in the morning. It's great to have it there, be good for the local people, but we need a better infrastructure in place.
A similar scheme for nightclubs was recently made permanent, allowing them to remain open until 4 a.m. But club owner Donald McLeod says that while the industry continues to face huge economic challenges, staying open can be more costly than closing the door.
So there was about 30 or 40 clubs that could have applied for it. Only 10 went for it because it's pretty exacting, because selling alcohol at that time in the morning demands many safety measures and duty of care. The cost of doing so, that extra hour, and I can speak for myself, doesn't make the clubs any more money.
To get one of the new licences, businesses will have to jump through a few hoops. They'll have to prove that them being open later will have a positive impact on the economy, and they'll have to show investment into safety and security of both staff and customers. But the licensing board said it would be taking a case-by-case approach. In a statement, a spokesperson said there was not an exhaustive list of factors to be checked off, adding they'd also be looking at dispersal of customers, alcohol-related crime and disorder, public nuisance and public health, including hospital admission figures. Businesses will have until January the 31st to apply for the extended licence, with the trial due to start in the middle of next year. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
Now, Rahman is here with the sport, and we know the finalists for the first cup final of the season.
We do indeed, John. It's Rangers and Aberdeen who will be back at the National Stadium. Good evening. John Lundstrom has described James Tavernier as a man mountain after the Rangers captain's match-winning performance helped the Alberts club book their place in the League Cup final. Hearts boss Stephen Naismith says they need to learn from the 3-1 defeat at Hampden. Meanwhile, Nick Montgomery says he takes responsibility for Hibs' poor results after they lost to Aberdeen in the weekend's other semi-final. Here's Jamie Borthwick.
It had been an afternoon of missed opportunities for Rangers until the captain took centre stage. 2 goals from James Tavernier put he and the club one game away from ending the wait for League Cup glory.
I don't think I can give him any more praise. The captain of the club, he steps up when he's needed. He gets, in my opinion, unfair criticism sometimes from you guys, from people outside, but sometimes he doesn't get enough credit when he gets us out at tough moments, and I just can't speak highly enough of him. He's a man mountain, and when the pressure's on, he steps up.
Hearts sought to nullify their opponents but collapsed midway through the second half, leaving themselves too much to do to salvage the tie.
To concede the 3 goals is a battle that we need to learn from, because like you say, the tie becomes a mammoth task when it's 3-0.
Okay, we are in a final, but if you are in a final or semi-final or quarter-final, it doesn't make a difference. At the end, it's about winning something. We're not there yet. And on Thursday, we have a really, really big game.
Stephen Kingsley had a red card rescinded by VAR, but it couldn't mask his disappointment at the final result.
When I was going over to shake their hands, that's what Nick Walsh said. He said, so I'm glad that the right decision came to in the end. And I said that to him, I was like, that's what it's there for. So, again, yeah, it's, the right decision came to in the end, but I mean, right now I think we're all just feeling disappointed in the result and what the opportunity that we had today.
Aberdeen will face Rangers in the final, despite Jack McKenzie receiving a red card on Saturday. Hibernian rued a missed opportunity as Nick Montgomery tries to impose his style on the team.
Speaking to the owners and people involved, we wanted to try and change the identity of the team, start being a good footballing team, and obviously results are important, and I think we've been unfortunate in some games to not get the results that we probably should have, and I take responsibility for that.
Jamie Borthwick, STV News.
David Turnbull says he'd love the opportunity to face Atletico Madrid in the Champions League tomorrow night. The midfielder has scored in Celtic's last 2 games, his latest strike in the Champions 3-0 win over Ross County on Saturday. The Parkhead side have 1 point from their 3 group games. Motherwell midfielder Blair Spittle says it's important the players don't panic that after the team suffered their 6th defeat in 7 games. The Steelmen lost 1-0 to Kilmarnock on Saturday, a result which leaves them sitting 9th in the Premiership.
We need to try and block all the negativity out of the changing room, and we've got a good group of boys in there that keep working hard. There's definitely no case of boys are down in tools or anything like that. Everybody's working hard and making sure that we're ready for these games coming up. It's important that you pick up as many points as possible. The league's very tight. It just takes a couple of good results to get yourself back in the mix, and it's certainly not a time for panic.
And Motherwell defender Paul McGinn is set for a spell on the sidelines after suffering from a suspected fractured cheekbone. Well, Motherwell's next match is away to St Johnstone tomorrow night, and after the Perth club appointed Craig Levine as their new manager, Levine says he's missed the cut and thrust of management. The former Hearts boss, who has signed a contract until the summer of 2026, succeeds Stephen McLean, who was sacked as Saints boss last month.
Listen, the cut and thrust of it is everything, isn't it? You know, putting yourself into the arena and seeing if you can come out on top. And it's still in here, you know. It's a difficult thing to get rid of.
And that, folks, is all your sport tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow.
All right, thanks very much, Rahman. Now, with flying carpets and magic lamps, it can only mean Aladdin is in town. In its UK and Ireland debut, Disney has brought its adaptation of the 1992 animated film to the Edinburgh Playhouse during its first leg of the tour. Well, our reporter Amy Flett went behind the scenes with some of the cast and crew.
They've performed it across the globe, but now it's our turn to be shown a whole new world. With a show packed full of dazzling costumes and an iconic set list, Disney's Aladdin has brought its much-loved tale to the Edinburgh Playhouse. And the stars already feel the audience has granted all of their wishes.
The first thing I come out and say is, "Salam and good evening, worthy friends, and welcome to the fabled city of Agrabah." And I almost can't speak over the cheer and the roar of applause.
There's a big finish at the end with, I won't give too much away, but there's a big finish. And I think opening night, there was about 45 seconds of applause because people just kept going. We were just like, me and Yoko just stood on stage like, okay.
It genuinely felt like my dreams are like just coming true right now. And it just makes it much more special that it's like a Disney magic sprinkled on top of it.
But the magic doesn't just happen on stage. Back in Wardrobe Village, hundreds of hours have gone into creating the costumes and perfecting the quick changes.
There's a whole design team behind all of this. You know, there's designers, there's supervisors, there's beaders, there's tailors, there's, you know, master shoemakers, and then as well you have your touring wardrobe team, maintenance, repairs, and all of that support that goes into making this show look so beautiful and that sort of Disney magic, that Disney sparkle.
And for the musical's producer, it's been a pivotal moment to return to the city where he came during his early career in show business.
I was here many, long before Disney years ago, of course, because of the festival. Because anybody who works in the theatre comes to the Edinburgh Festival. But it never fails to delight me that no matter where I go in the world, that the people who come together have very similar experiences. The audience who comes today, who might be in their 30s or 40s, saw these things first when they were children. And they hold them very close to their heart. It's a responsibility for us, but it's also a joy.
Disney's Aladdin runs until the 18th of November. Amy Flett, STV News, Edinburgh.
Looks spectacular. And talking about Sean, how's the weather? And nature had its own firework display last night.
Well, we had an amazing show of the aurora, the merry dancers last night in the skies right across Scotland. But of course, there was quite a bit of cloud coming and going in some spots, especially in the west. Now, I think this winter and next winter will be particularly good for the Northern Lights. So a lot more cloud around tonight, so I don't expect many of us will get to see it tonight. The levels will be slightly less, but we are going into a peak in activity in the sun. So the next couple of winters looking pretty good for the Northern Lights. Let's have a look, though, at our weather forecast.
A spell of sea air will be followed by a strong chance of you have to try these. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, I'm going to start this evening just by showing you the very cold air that's starting to pull to the north of us. OK, yes, in the Arctic Circle, you'd expect cold weather, but it is very cold just now. Northern parts of Norway, mainland Norway, daytime temperatures in some spots about -7 to -8 degrees by the end of the week. We could just tap into a little bit of that cold air later on in the week, a bit of a north to northeasterly setting in. But by that, I just mean widely our temperatures down to around freezing by the time we get to the end of the week by night, and daytime values about 7 or 8. Pretty typical stuff at this time of year, but just a wee bit chillier. Now tonight's not going to be quite as cold because we're going to see a lot more cloud around, shower outbreaks of rain through much of this evening and tonight, so I don't think there's going to be a great chance for us to see the aurora once again, but some clearer skies again developing as we head into tomorrow morning. Perhaps a very, very late opportunity to see that. But into tomorrow, we've still got scattered showers, mainly across lights of Argyll and Bute, the Highlands, 1 or 2 also in Ayrshire, maybe in Inverclyde too, but for most of us a lot of dry, bright weather, so quite a quiet day to come tomorrow. Temperatures about 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. Not so quiet on Wednesday, heavy rain to start with, that clears away, and then we're left behind with blustery showers through Wednesday, heavy and thundery showers, and also gales around western coastal parts for a time too. But yes, quieter once again towards the end of the week. Lochwinnoch, one of our coolest spots, widely down to freezing by Friday night. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And finally, lonesome no more. A sheep that's been stuck in a cliff in the Highlands for 2 years has been rescued and given a new home.
Dubbed Britain's loneliest sheep, Fiona was rescued from the cave she was living in and taken to a farm park. Well, Vanessa Taff has more on this remarkable rescue.
One really was the loneliest number for this sheep. After 2 solitary years on this cut-off small beach in the Highlands, a group of farmers flocked to the rescue.
And don't die.
Scaling a cliff until they reached Fiona, Britain's loneliest sheep.
Puffing our tail, I'll get a wee lift. Right, there we go. We've come up here with some heavy equipment and we've got this sheep up an incredible slope. Let me just bring you in close to her here. Fiona.
Being terrified of heights and of dying, I was very, very relieved, I must admit, but even more relieved that we got her up there without her, having any issues. Stress can be a real concern for an animal like Fiona, but she just kept relaxed all the way. We have some great footage actually of her nibbling grass on the way up. She was just fair enjoying herself.
And once she was back in civilization, it was time for a much needed haircut. But Fiona's rehoming hasn't been without drama. Protesters gathered outside her new home, demanding she's moved again away from this farm park.
Well, she's here. She had a long road to get here, obviously a deer and rescue to get her to where she is, but she's in the right place. She's going to be well looked after and she's going to be treated like a queen. She's in fantastic condition. She's 92 kilos, which is really, really heavy for a sheep of her breed, and she's done remarkably well. We all thought she was going to be really skinny, but it's the other way around.
As the international media attention dies down, this castaway is getting used to her new roommates and settling in to a warm, cosy bed. Vanessa Taff, STV News.
Oh dear.
Oh, come on, John, that's not bad.
Can we get off air now, please? You'll be sheepish about that in the morning.
Possibly. Good night.